Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Sukkah Daf Chav Gimel is the Gemara immediately following a Mishnah. The Mishnah had said 2 halachas, the Gemara will add a third halacha, and each of these 3 halachas the Gemara will explain which Tana holds of this halacha, which Tana does not. And the last one we will define a Machlokes Amoraim, how precisely it works. The 3 halachas are as follows. Mishnah had said if you build a sukkah in a ship, it's kosher. If you build a sukkah on top of an animal, it's kosher. The Gemara will add if you use an animal as the wall of your sukkah, that's kosher. The Gemara will explain which 3 Tanaim hold that way, and then the Gemara will explain how exactly what is potentially the problem with using an animal as a wall of a sukkah, and challenge which Tanaim hold the way. So let's begin the Gemara. The Gemara says that this halacha we've seen in the Mishnah, that you're allowed to build a sukkah in a ship. The Gemara says Machlokes Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Kiva says you're allowed to, it's kosher. Rabbi Gamliel says it is puzzle. The Gemara quotes an incident in which they were both traveling on a ship, and Rabbi Kiva built a sukkah, and then it blew off. And Rabbi Gamliel said, this is exactly my point, that you cannot build a sukkah on a ship because it's going to blow away. And Akiva, where is your sukkah? The Gemara explains, actually, the entire machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Gamliel is over whether or not a sukkah has to be able to withstand the wind. Rabbi Kiva says the sukkah is supposed to be a diras arai, temporary. If it gets blown away in a certain amount of wind, it's okay, it's still a kosher sukkah. Rabbi Gamliel says a sukkah has to be much stronger than that. It has to be a diras keva, and therefore it has to be able to withstand the wind. It says the Gemara there are 3 levels of wind. They argue over the middle level of wind, and it sets up as follows. An unusual wind, if the sukkah could withstand every type of wind except for an unusual wind, a wind which almost never blows even on the water, that is kosher according to everyone. If it can't stand in a usual wind, even on land, that is puzzle according to everyone. The machlokes is the middle level of wind, which is a common wind on the water, but it's an uncommon wind on land. That's the same level. Uncommon on land, but common on the water. Here, this sukkah is in the water, so does it have to be able to withstand what's common there where it is? Rabbi Kiva says, no, it's still considered to be a diras. It's still considered to be a diras arai, even if it can't withstand the local wind, as long as it could withstand the wind on land. Rabban Gamliel says, no, it has to be able to withstand the local wind, and that is what the machlokes is about. So the Gemara, next case in the Mishnah, was if you build a sukkah on top of an animal, the halacha is that it's a kosher sukkah, the Mishnah said, but you can't go onto it on Yom Tov, because it's Gzeir D'Rabbanan, you're not allowed to use an animal, climb an animal, put anything on an animal on Yom Tov. Says the Gemara, this is machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir is the one who says it's kosher. What's Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning? Why is it puzzle? The Torah says, Sukkah, Chag HaSukkah is Tasar Chashivas Yamim, your sukkah has to be able to be usable all 7 days. This sukkah can't be used on Yom Tov. Rabbi Meir says it could be used on Yom Tov. It's only Midrabanan they said not to use it on Yom Tov. D'oraisa, it's usable on Yom Tov. So D'oraisa, there's no psul. You're bringing me a proof from a D'oraisa halacha. The Gemara now introduces a third halacha, which is also a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. And this is about using an animal as a wall of a sukkah. Can you have an animal stand in one spot, use him as a wall, put something on the top of him, and put tzchach on top of him? So the Gemara says it's machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, except this time Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher and Rabbi Meir says it's puzzle. And Rabbi Meir says this is part of a list of things that you cannot use a living creature for. You cannot use a living creature as a wall of a sukkah or as a lechi for a mavoi to make it permitted to carry within the mavoi. Cannot use it as one of the 4 corner pieces, which Chazal said you could put around the well. If you have 4 corners, 4 L-shaped corner brackets set up around the well, you're allowed to draw water from the well. It counts as if it's within an Erev. You also can't consider it to be the cover of a grave. If a living creature is covering a grave, it does not get the halacha of the cover of the grave. This is a chumrah, that it creates halacha that it becomes a tameh, and it's matame other things, like an avatumah, like the halacha of the cover of a coffin. Now, Rabbi Yossi Aglili adds another thing, you also can't use it to write a get for a woman on it. Okay, now the Gemara is Machlokes Hamoraim. What is Rabbi Meir's reason? Rabbi Meir says you can't use a living creature for all these things. The Gemara specifically focuses on sukkah. Why can't you use a living creature as a sukkah? Gemara says Machlokes between Abaye and Rabbi Zera. Abaye says we're afraid that the animal might die on sukkahs and then it'll collapse. And if it falls down, you will not have a 10 tefach high sukkah wall anymore. That's the situation. You'll have a puzzle sukkah and you'll be stuck without a sukkah. Rabbi Zera says if it's going to run away, it'll run away. You won't have a wall for your sukkah either. So the Gemara says, what's the nafka between the two? Is there a case where they agree or disagree? So the Gemara says, well, if you're talking about an elephant, there's no problem if it collapses, because it'll be 10 tvachim high. Even its carcass will be 10 tvachim high. So if you have an elephant that is not tied, so Rabbi Zera would say it still might leave, and Abaye would say it's kosher because even if it collapses, it'll still be at least 10 tvachim high. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Abaye still has to hold Rabbi Zera. You definitely have to be concerned it's going to walk away. How can he not hold that concern? The Gemara says, okay, so let's flip it. Let's find the opposite case, where an animal who's not an elephant is tied in place, so it can't leave. So here you only have a concern that it's going to die. So according to Abaye, it would be possible because it might die. According to Rabbi Zera, it's not possible because he's not afraid that it's going to die. What do you mean? He should also be concerned that it still might die. Versus no, Rabbi Zera holds that we don't walk around afraid that things are going to die. It's not a concern. It does not happen often. And therefore, you're allowed to use it as a sukkah. We're not afraid that it's going to die on sukkahs. It's not a reason to stop using it. So now the Gemara asks, how are you going to use an animal standing? The space under its between its legs from the stomach to the floor is not filled in. There's empty space there. You can't have such a big space. So Gemara says you fill it in with branches, hoots of adafna, weeds and branches, whatever it is. The Gemara says, but maybe it'll lie down. Even if you tied it, it might lie down on the spot. The Gemara says, so you have to have it suspended from ropes that it can't lie down. The Gemara says, well, if it can't lie down, so even if it's going to die, what's the problem? It won't fall. The Gemara says, no, it won't fall, but it might contract. And if it contracts, the carcass contracts, it'll get a little bit lower. So if it's exactly the minimum height, so let's say it's exactly just more than 7 tvachim high, and the schach is 3 tvachim above it, so you're relying on lava to reach the schach. So it'll contract, you won't have lava anymore, you'll passel the sukkah, and that's what the concern is. So now the Gemara says, hold on a second, is it really true that Abaye holds that Rabbi Meir is concerned that something is going to die? According to the way we're explaining this, Machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is that Rabbi Meir says you can't use a living creature because it might die, and Rabbi Yehuda apparently holds you don't have to be afraid that something is going to die. But we have a statement of Abaye where he says the opposite. He's talking about the case of a Bas Yisrael, a woman whose family is a Yisrael, and she's married to a Kohen. She's only eating truma as long as her husband is alive. The husband travels across the sea. So we have a Mishnah that says she's allowed to keep eating truma because she's allowed to assume that he's alive and he did not die. But we have a conflicting Mishnah that says if somebody in a similar situation gives his wife a get, and he says, here, you're divorced on condition that I die in an hour. Meaning this get takes effect 1 hour before I die. So he's a kohen. She can only eat truma as long as she's married to him. He might die within an hour. So this case, there's a Mishnah that says he's forbidden to eat truma because he might be dead in 59 minutes from now, and she might be divorced, and we're not aware of it. So the Gemara asks there, contradiction between these two Mishnayos. You have to be afraid somebody will die or he did die. So Abaye there says, okay, it's not a problem. One is Rabbi Meir and one is Rabbi Yehuda. But he says Rabbi Meir is the one who says that it's not a problem. You don't have to be concerned that it's going to die. And Rabbi Yehuda says the one that we are concerned that it's going to die. And he brings a proof. He brings a proof from somebody who buys wine. And he wants to take off Truma, Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni. He wants to take off all these things. Problem is, he doesn't have a cup. He doesn't have a cup to pour off the wine that he's taking off. And it's going to be Shabbos soon. He needs to use it on Shabbos. So what he does is that he says, okay, listen, I'm going to drink as much of this wine as I can. And I'm going to leave over at the end enough to fulfill Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni, Truma, Meiser, all those things. And that wine, whichever is going to end up being left at the end, wherever it is in this barrel now, is Truma, Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni right now. So this is a principle called boirer. We don't know which wine it is yet, but we'll find out soon. So can you say this or not? So that is a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and it's Rabbi Meir against Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Meir says you could do it. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon says you can't do it. It would seem to be that they say you can't do it because they're afraid the barrel might break and then you'll end up losing the wine and never separated, and therefore it would come out that you never took truma off and it's also from now. While Rabbi Meir says you're not afraid the barrel is going to break. If Rabbi Meir says you're not afraid the barrel is going to break, then he's not afraid people are going to die. Rabbi Yehuda says you are afraid the barrel will break. He would say that you are afraid people are going to die. So this is what Abaye says, and he ends up therefore using this as a proof to explain that the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is over this idea, and therefore the contradiction in the brises as to whether you have to be afraid that the person who gave his wife a get, the kohen who gave his wife a get, or went to Medina Siyam, whether or not he's dead or he's very soon going to die, Rabbi Meir would not be concerned, and Rabbi Yehuda is concerned. But that contradicts our brisa, because our brisa, and what we just said, Rabbi Meir is the one who says that we are afraid the animal is going to die, and Rabbi Yehuda says we're not afraid the animal is going to die. So one of the differences, we have to change what Abaye said. Abaye didn't say this. Abaye didn't bring in anything about the case of the barrel and the wine and the truma. He said the machlokes, the contradiction between the two brises about the kohen. One is Rabbi Meir and one is Rabbi Yehuda, just like we said. But it's the other way. Rabbi Meir is the one who holds that it might die, and Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says that they are not going to die, and therefore we have the same. That matches up with the opinion here in this Mishnah. Rabbi Meir is the one who says we're afraid the animal will die, and therefore it's possible you can't use it as a sukkah wall. And Rabbi Yehuda says we don't have to be afraid it's going to die, and you could use it as a sukkah wall. Now the Gemara still has to deal with what are you going to do with the case of the barrel with the wine. That contradicts. We'll deal with that on that.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.